and welcome to GameSec. I'm wearing a Mega Man shirt, which means we're talking about Super Nintendo shooters.
I mean, couldn't you see the correlation between the two?
The Super Nintendo is not a system that is widely known for its prowess at shoot-em-ups.
No, it's obviously an RPG machine, but it does have some shooters that are pretty good. Not a lot, but there are some noticeable ones.
Yes, so let's just take a look at some of them. After I got my Super Nintendo, Darius Twin by Taito was one of the very first games I rented. This is an exclusive version of Darius just for the system. This one takes place thousands of years later and you play as the descendants of the original pilots. Now the same evil forces are back and guess who has to stop them just because you're related. Right away you're treated to a great looking bright beachside stage. I've got to say that this kind of leaves a good first impression. The control is smooth and the difficulty isn't too overwhelming. As you fly around, groups of cubes will float by. Shoot them all down and a colored diamond will be revealed. And you're going to want to grab that because, yep, you guessed it, that is a power-up. There's lots of these power-up icons in the game, so be sure to grab every single one that you can. Some will power up your main laser. Others will power up your diagonal shots. Others will give you an invincibility shield, which is good for several hits depending on its color. What's really kind of interesting is that when you die, not only do you respawn right there, but none of your power-ups are taken away. And that is extremely unusual for a shooter. Needless to say, if you can survive long enough and you keep grabbing power-ups, you'll be insanely tough. Man, I could have used these weapons back in the first few stages. Of course, at the end of every stage is a boss or a pair of bosses. Defeat them and you go to the stage select. This is pretty typical with Darius games. A single game will have 7 stages with a total of 12 to choose from. You'd think this would be great for replayability, but only kind of. There's not really a whole lot of difference between stages B and C, for example, or E and F. The colors will be slightly different and there might be some additional enemy patterns in one, but mostly they're the same. Even the bosses are the same. This was a pretty big disappointment to me, as in other Darius games the stages are a lot more unique. Your ship controls well and it moves around at just the right speed. Fortunately, there aren't any speed power-ups, so you don't have to worry about ruining that perfect speed. Of course, the game does get a lot more challenging in the upper level, but it's still really fun to play through again and try and do better. The graphics are mostly really good for an early game on the system. Lots of great color and some nice detail throughout. Though a lot of the enemy bullets are kind of difficult to see, especially those coming from the bosses. The music is pretty good. The theme in the first stage is actually really awesome. Now, it's not like the rest of the music is bad, but it really never lives up to that first stage theme. The sound effects themselves aren't objectionable. One nice thing is that I never encountered even the slightest hint of slowdown while playing. Everything moves fairly quick, and that's pretty impressive for such an early title. This one even has 2 players simultaneous play. You might get some slowdown there though. Overall, this is a fun game, and I'd say it's worth about $10 or so. You certainly could do worse. Since I'm here, I might as well mention Supernova, also by Taito. This is another entry into the Darius series, but is pretty much the polar opposite of Darius Twin. I don't hate it, I guess, but its main problem is that it's so incredibly slow and boring. This time when you die, the screen slowly fades out, sits on a black image for several seconds, and then slowly fades back in, placing you back in the stage with all of your power-ups gone. You know, I've noticed that quite a few Super Nintendo games love doing the slow fades to black and just sit there on the black screen for a while. What's up with that? Anyway, not all is bad here. You pick from 3 different styles of ships. As you upgrade your weapons, both your main shot and your bomb will power up. If you fire your shot or your bomb by themselves, they'll be more powerful than if you fire both at the same time, which is kind of interesting. The stage select is still here and it's been kind of reworked a little, and now you have a total of 15 stages. Some of the stages have branching paths, I like that. The graphics are nice and detailed though, nothing really pops out. The music is pretty good, and though it's not outstanding, it's probably the high point of the game for me. So overall, this is a game that doesn't really deserve any hate, but it doesn't really deserve any love either. Honestly, I got bored with it and just turned it off before I even ran out of lives. I recommend Darius Twin over this one, but maybe you have more patience for things that are boring than I do. Hell, you're still watching GameSack.
Strike Gunner Stg is a vertical shooter by Athena. Sexually transmitted gonorrhea. Joe made me say that. At first, I really didn't like this game. Right away, I didn't like the side borders on the screen. There sure is a lot of crap in them for what little they actually tell you. But there's only two things you need to know about them. You can see how many ships you have left by the number over there. Then the vertical bar shows you how much of your subweapon you have left. Other than that, why all the clutter? I know this is a port of an arcade, and this helps pillar box a game, but I just wish they looked cleaner. As you start a game, you can pick one subweapon out of 15. This is cool, but after you beat a level, you can't use that subweapon again. This I don't like. I want to be able to use whatever subweapon I want in every single stage if necessary. I can see why they did this though. Forcing you to pick a new subweapon makes you try them all, which of course will add depth to the game. The problem is that not all of these weapons are good. If it were up to me, I would pick this shield and use it the whole game. Easy win. But there are other subweapons that actually do a lot of damage. Like this atomic missile, which made this boss fight end very quickly. So the first level, as you can see here, is really ugly. You're flying over what appears to be a very dense jungle. There seems to be only 2, maybe 3 types of enemies here. Helicopters and jet planes. Speaking of jet planes, the ones in this game are really good at flying backwards. How in the hell are they accomplishing this? Anyways, you're flying over the dense jungle which seems to go on and on. It's totally repetitive and gets boring really quick, kinda like my dialogue. So the first part of the level is jungle, and then it actually opens up to something just as ugly, sand. The fourth level finally gets a water level, which is okay, but what the hell? Jets taking off from a helipad? Stupid idiots! Helipads are for helicopters! Though, I guess they could be VTOLs, but I don't know. I have no faith in these designers. At the 5th stage and beyond, the game really does start to get better looking, and the backgrounds are more interesting than just sand and jungle. I do like flying over the planet and then into space. This is much better. Your ship is pretty basic and has a normal gun which can be slowly upgraded by picking up these icons that are dropped for you. I've got mixed feelings about the delivery vehicles for these icons though. On the one hand, they're all different in every stage and I like that for the variety. On the other hand, they're all different in every stage and I feel like I'm being attacked from behind. The music is pretty lame in this game. It's all short looping tracks that start to hurt your ears after the 3rd loop. I mean, the levels are fairly long in length, so why not make the music to match? STG isn't a bad game and it's fun for the first couple of times you play, but there's nothing really special about it that makes you want to keep coming back to it. What are your opinions of this game?
This is D-Force by Asmic, and that stands for Dimensional Force, so get your mind out of the gutter. This was also a very early game on the system. It was kinda like the developer said, hey, let's make a shooter with lots of Mode 7 and give it that famous Asmic quality. Well, they did just that, unfortunately. As you can see, it's an overhead shooter, and it's tough as hell, even on the easy setting. Anyway, it seems fairly typical at first. You shoot down enemy ships and get power-ups. Like Darius Twin, your power-ups stay with you even after you die. Hell, they're even there after you continue except for your homing missiles. Not like your missiles matter much anyway because they're so damn weak. Even when you're completely powered up, your ship still feels rather weak. Midway through the stage, you'll zoom in closer to the ground and take on some land-based enemies. Eventually, of course, you'll get to the boss. After that, you go to an exploration stage, as the game calls it. Are you ready to explore? Well, too bad, because you're not going to be doing any of that here. Suddenly, instead of planes and technology, you're fighting colorful birds and dinosaurs that can shoot bullets. This stage looks like something out of Dragon Spirit, though the game is nowhere near as good. You can change between sky and ground level at any time just by tapping a shoulder button. Can your 16-bit system do this? So much power! Anyway, these stages are much more enjoyable to play through, but they are far from great. I do like fighting this boss though. When you defeat him, his head and tail explode, but his body remains perfectly fine. I don't even know why I have to fight him anyway. It's not like he was causing any trouble. He wasn't even shooting at me, and he's only moving his tail to try to defend himself. The poor bastard. I think the main problem with this game is that all of the enemy sprites move at only 30 frames per second, and they move pretty fast, so it makes everything extremely difficult to dodge. Granted, not like there's many places on the screen where it's safe to go. I mean, you've got the power-up ships coming in from the bottom every 6 or 7 seconds, so you can't hang out at any of the screen edges. Also, the screen gets extremely cluttered, and there quite often is no place to go but straight to hell. Quit spinning, I know I'm dead. Even the slowdown that often happens doesn't help much. It can be very frustrating, and even after many different attempts, I didn't find myself improving much at the game. Its design is simply awful, and it really does have that asthmatic quality to it. At the title screen, you can choose to play the shooting or the exploration mode if you don't like the game switching back and forth every other stage. Even though I like playing the exploration mode a lot more, the problem is that there's no power-up, so you're pretty much screwed. The graphics are extremely bland and chunky, and the music will get on your nerves extremely fast by repeating the same short melody over and over and over again. Oh, and your weapon fire sounds like someone trying to unsuccessfully stifle a wet fart. Take it from me, avoid the hell out of this one.
Alright, there's a few shooters, nothing real spectacular there. I mean, granted, yeah, the Genesis has a lot better shooters out there, but these are okay.
Darius isn't bad. Well, Darius Twin isn't bad.
Okay.
So, I don't know. Anyway, we've got a few more to show you, so let's just get right into it.
Don't go anywhere. Here's The Hunt for Red October. It's based on the movie starring Sean Connery, who plays a Soviet submarine captain that wants to defect to the USA and does so in a Soviet nuclear submarine. You know, I don't think I've ever seen this movie. It sounds like something I'd like, so maybe I'll check it out one of these days. It's funny because as I was playing this game, I never got the feeling that I was trying to escape the Soviet Union. You do all sorts of missions that have nothing to do with defecting to the USA. The game starts out with a single mission. This one is pretty easy and lets you get used to controlling your submarine. I've got to say that controlling your submarine is easy. Who would have known that a 16,000-ton nuclear submarine would be so agile? Look at this thing going backwards, forwards, up and down as if it were a little fish in the water. After you beat the first mission, then you unlock a few more missions and then you can choose which order you want to tackle these. Once you beat these, more missions will open up and so on and so forth. The levels themselves aren't anything amazing to look at. I mean, they look fine, but there's not a lot of detail here. You have lots of other submarines, ships, and aircraft to take out as you make your way to the end of each stage. Luckily, your sub is equipped with all sorts of firepower. You have missiles that can shoot straight up, which are great for anything above you. You have torpedoes that shoot straight ahead. You have mines that you can drop for enemy guns on the seafloor or submarines below you, and you have an arcing missile that's good for taking out enemy land bases. These are all great weapons, and they do a nice job of clearing out the enemies. There's one problem here though. You have a limited supply, so you kinda have to be thrifty with them. I say kind of because throughout each mission there's these blinking icons which will refill your weapons and reduce the damage your sub has taken. Yes, your sub will take lots of damage, and if you aren't careful then it won't take long before it's all over. So seek out these icons and collect them, you will need them. There's another way to reduce the damage to your sub, and it's kind of a minigame. If you run over this icon, you get taken to a first-person shooter stage. You have to take out aircraft and ships, and if you take out enough of them, it'll reduce the damage to your ship as well. The cool part about these first-person modes is that they are Super Scope compatible. That's right, hook that bad boy up and use it to take out the enemy. It's a lot more precise than using the D-pad. There's a few flaws about this game that make it very annoying and frustrating. For one, once you die it's game over and there are no continues. This sucks as the game would have been a bit more fun if you could continue. Secondly, the damage you've taken and the weapons you've used up carry over to the next mission. This really sucks as there's been multiple times where I've finished a mission and have over 70% damage to my sub. Then I start the next mission and there I am with this huge handicap, and of course it doesn't take long before I see the game over screen. Die, you little bastards! You die with your sub, get back in there! If the developers weren't such dumbasses and would have given you a few continues and maybe fresh life for new missions, I would have really liked this game. As it is now, it's still enjoyable, but I don't want to waste the time playing the same mission over and over just to die early in a new stage. And finally, the music in this game doesn't fit the action. It's all classically inspired by Beethoven and Mussorgsky. I like it, but it doesn't fit here at all. So if you're in the mood for a less than average shooter, give this one a shot. I sure hope the movie is better.
Alright, now it's time for some biometal! And yes, that's 2 Unlimited that you're hearing. This is a side-scrolling shooter with some cool play mechanics. The long galactic war is finally over. Now the good people of the galaxy are trying to find resources. But then some half-machine, half-animals attack! Their numbers are increasing and now you need to defeat them within 32 hours! It's too bad that this rule doesn't apply to the game itself. Like 32 hours after you first turn it on, it just dies and erases itself if it hasn't been beaten. I think people would really like that feature. Anyway, this is mostly your standard shooter with some basic shot and missile power-ups. But you also have what the game calls a GAM. You activate this by pressing the Y button. 4 orbs spin around you and protect you from enemy fire and can also damage and destroy enemies that they touch. But that's not all. If you press the A button, their circular pattern grows bigger and then shrinks back down, which helps clear the screen of bullets and harm more enemies. Or you can press the right shoulder button, which will launch the orbs in the opposite direction you're holding. These then will rubber band back to you. This is a great way to attack bosses and larger enemies as it does a lot of damage. But don't get too excited because the charge drains whenever you have the orbs activated. Can we show the charge meter please? Who the hell is editing this thing? Yes, there we go, thank you. So it's a good idea to turn the orbs off if you're not using them so you can have enough charge for when you do. So the play mechanics are pretty cool. How is the game itself? Well, not as good as it could be, honestly. Everything, including your ship, moves much too fast. There's plenty of slowdown here, but it really doesn't help as much as I'd like. There's also a ton of flicker and enemy bullets as well as your ship get lost in it. Your Super Nintendo remembers where everything is though, and it will not forget to kill you even if both your ship and the enemy bullet are invisible thanks to flicker. When you die, your weapon powers down a level. So the game is pretty tough. I think it could be more enjoyable if the developers showed some more restraint in the level and enemy pattern designs. The graphics are pretty damn good, I do like them a lot. There's great use of colors and transparency. I mean, look at those clouds up there. They really do look aesthetically pleasing. The enemies look good, but they don't look as nice as the backgrounds. The music is interesting. I'm not the world's biggest fan of 2 Unlimited, but they did a good job here remixing many of their songs. But did you know that the Japanese version of this game has its own unique soundtrack? It sounds more like a normal game. I mean, it's not bad or anything, and in fact, I kind of enjoy it. But the licensed soundtrack for the North American and European versions was the primary selling point. This is an interesting game, but it's a far cry from fantastic.
Imperium by Vic Tokai is another vertical shooter. This one has a storyline that makes absolutely no sense. According to the story, on a distant planet, human life disappeared a millennium ago. Robots have enslaved other robots. The slave robots make a mech suit that can only be controlled by a human. Now why in the hell would a robot make a mech suit for a human when humans are long gone? Stupid robot. Well, they must have found a human somewhere because the mech is launched and you're controlling it. Wait, that makes me the human. Wow, they are smart. At first glance, the game kinda looks like a gimpy version of Musha, being that the mech looks very similar, but it's not. I like how this game plays out. Instead of getting a bunch of power-up icons as you're playing each level, you have an experience point system. It's displayed in the upper left-hand corner of the screen and it works really well. You can easily see how much experience points you have and how many you need to gain the next level. Once you gain levels, different things will happen. Firstly, your life bar will refill 1 bar, which is helpful, but it would have been nice just to refill the whole thing. That's because this game is tough and every little bit of life is needed. Secondly, you start to get more weapons when you reach new levels. You can easily switch between them on the fly and most of them are really good. As you keep playing and leveling up, the weapons you've earned will start to get stronger and have different patterns. Even the normal weapon you start the game with will level up. Of course, the game won't let you get super powered because over time when you take a hit, your weapon will go down a level. This makes the game that much harder. This area here where you have these indestructible blocks will level your weapon down real quick, and then you'll die because it's ridiculously tough to sneak through unscathed. You do have a secondary missile attack and it can be helpful at times, but you only have a limited number of them that you can use. You can get more missile attacks, and this is the only icon that you can pick up in the game. The game does offer some continues, but don't get excited because there's not too many of them. When you use a continue, you start from the beginning of the level with no experience, but the weapons you've earned are thankfully still there. It's not easy and the stages are very long. As you may remember, I really suck at shooters, so I was only able to make it to the end of stage 2 before I ran out of continues. Yes, laugh away, but what I have played I definitely enjoyed. I think the game has some nice colorful graphics, and I like the little touches of things like birds flying way below you, or here where you can see the mid-boss and level boss flying way down there. Little things like this do a lot to add to your immersion in the game. The music's not bad either, and I enjoyed it for what it is. The SNES has slim pickings as far as shooters go, so if you're in the mood for one, this would be a decent choice if you're up for the challenge.
Okay, I think I can squeeze Aero Fighters from Miko River into this episode. Finally, a well-designed shooter by people who understand the genre. This is an overhead shooter where you control a powerful jet plane in your mission to do whatever it is you're trying to do. The game does not give you much story to go on. Maybe it's all in the manual, I don't have it, so I don't know. At the start, you get to choose from 4 different pilots, each from their very own country. They all have their own planes with their own unique weapon and bomb styles. You also have a stock of bombs that can be replenished. You fly on missions and destroy various military-type equipment, but it doesn't end there. You shoot down houses and other stuff like that. You even get to shoot down buildings in a big city. Might as well. It's not like I have to live or work there or anything, so shooting up the city is really no big deal. I'm sure that they'll forgive me once they taste that delicious cup of freedom that I'm delivering. The control feels really nice. Each character is slightly different in that regard as well. The guy from the USA and the one from the UK are the worst. Especially the British guy, he's just so damn slow. The Japanese guy and the Swedish guy are both much better. In fact, the Swedish guy is a real powerhouse. When he's powered up, he's nearly unstoppable and he does a ton of damage. There's a total of 8 stages and the first few appear in a random order. As you're blasting away some ground-based targets, some money will appear that you as a player will never be able to spend in the game. What's funny is that the money appears as currency for whichever country the pilot you chose is from. That's awfully considerate of the enemy to keep their money around in a form that you can use so you don't have to exchange it later. Still gonna keep blowing you up though, you can't bribe me. This game was also known as Sonic Wings and was ported from the arcade original. It's really not that bad of a port. Here's the arcade version. Now here's the Super Nintendo version. A little weaker, but not a bad conversion at all. Hell, I think the music is definitely better on the Super Nintendo port. The graphics are pretty nice, though certainly nothing amazing. They get the job done, even if they are a touch unremarkable. Like I said, the sound and music is pretty good as well. Again, nothing amazing, but we've heard much worse in this episode. This also features 2-player simultaneous gameplay. Overall, it's a good game, but there's nothing here to make it an outstanding game. It's fun to play, but it's not a game that you're going to look back on years from now and say, now Aero Fighters, that was a game that really sticks with me. It's definitely worth a try though.
Whoa. How can we have a Super Nintendo shooter episode and we're not covering Space Megaforce or things of that nature?
Probably because we covered them already?
Yes. And once again, if you click the card somewhere up at the top of the screen, you'll be taken to our very old episode where we covered the more popular Super Nintendo shooters.
That's right. And, unless you guys give us some ideas from other ones that we haven't covered or some good ones, maybe in Japan, that are Japan only, that are worth talking about, this might be our last Super Nintendo shooter episode.
It probably will be, because we were really struggling to come up with enough to cover in this episode.
Yeah, it was tough, but we managed.
But still, stuff like Imperium is pretty good if it wasn't so damn hard.
Yeah, some good ideas in there for sure.
Yeah, and, Arrow Fighters, pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But anyway, what do you guys think? What's your favorite Super Nintendo shooter? Let us know, and in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
Hey, what's up, Joe?
Oh, hi, Dave. I'm playing Musha with the XE1AP controller. It's really the best ultimate way to play. Do you want to try?
Yeah, I do. Sweet. I just broke my finger. Oh yeah, this is great. I'm afraid to bleed. Joe, help!
The XE1AP controller.
The ultimate way to play Musha.